West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Miles Taylor. He's the no longer anonymous former senior Trump administration official. You'll remember him turning the White House upside down in 2018 when he wrote that mysterious New York Times op-ed and subsequent book, A Warning, declaring he was part of the, quote, resistance working to thwart Trump's worst inclinations and did ultimately, of course, reveal his identity. Taylor was chief of staff to Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen and back with us on Primetime. It's good to see you.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Now, first, the flavor. Does this sound, as reporting, remotely like what you understand about Milley, his concerns, and what Trump could trigger in people like him?
Chris, the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And I want to say two things about it. First, it's alarming, but second, it's not surprising. The alarming piece is obvious. You hit on those points. You had the president's top military advisor, his hand-picked top military advisor, by the way, who was so worried about his mental state that he wanted to basically keep the nuclear codes from him, put checks and balances in place, and talk to foreign adversaries to keep wars from breaking out. That suggests to me that the president's own top military advisor at that time didn't see Russia and China and Iran as the biggest threats to the United States. He saw the president of the United States as the biggest threat to the country. That is alarming. Two, though, Chris, why is this not surprising? Because I witnessed it. I saw cabinet secretaries in the first year of this administration talking about the potential of invoking the 25th Amendment because they were worried the president was so mentally unstable. And there's one other episode among many that I witnessed that was very similar to this Milley incident. We'd been having conversations about North Korea, and we're very worried that the president's bellicose rhetoric was going to lead to an unintentional war with North Korea. I can remember walking out of the Situation Room in a meeting, and Secretary Jim Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, turned to me and the Secretary of Homeland Security and said, if you all aren't preparing the homeland for war, you're not doing your jobs. And he was saying, we just didn't know where this situation was going to go because the president was spiraling. That's deeply disturbing, but again, I think that reinforces what Milley saw firsthand.
All right, we'll get back to him in 1 second. Just in terms of the threat, forget about putting military in. The aspect of how dramatically he wanted to take military out. If the book is right about this secret memo to withdraw January 15, 2021, with what we just saw, with a lot of lead time in getting them out that Biden had, what do you think might have happened if the military had been pulled out that abruptly?
Well, I hate to say it, this is something that we warned Trump against in the first year. When he took office, he actually wanted to pull out that abruptly, Chris. I don't know if this has been reported yet, but he told us he wanted to pull out that abruptly at the very beginning of the administration. He just wanted to be gone from Afghanistan. And we pressed him and convinced him in August of his first year to keep a U.S. troop presence. But by the end of the administration, he'd gotten rid of the guardrails. He'd gotten rid of John Kelly, who convinced him to stay and stay the course. He'd got rid of Jim Mattis and others, and he wanted to double down on that. If he'd been able to execute that in January, the humanitarian catastrophe we saw over the course of the past month would have been on steroids. It would have been more dead Americans trying to get out of that country. It would have been an absolute nightmare. I think Milley really deserves immense credit for preventing that from having happened.
Milley deserves credit. Help us understand why what he did is okay and not maybe he had the right feelings, but is it the right way to go about it? Or are you supposed to resign and go public?
Yeah, I think that's a tough situation to be in, Chris. I mean, look, I witnessed a lot of people in it. I was in that spot myself. I think what's revealing about this episode is that the guardrails are so thin that people like General Milley, I'm sure in his case, were worried that if he left and spoke out, well, maybe a more compliant person would be put in his place who would execute a nuclear strike for the president to have cause to stay in office. And that's the dilemma that a lot of these people close to the president faced. I think the answer becomes when the president no longer will listen to your advice and will just go around you anyway, that's when it's time to go and to blow the whistle. Now, a lot of people did do that, and I think it's important that there were folks like General Milley and others who stayed till the end to keep their hands on the steering wheel as much as possible before this thing fell apart. But the fact that he was worried about the president potentially starting a war at the end of his term alarms me. And Chris, I'm going to add one more anecdote here, and that is Donald Trump talked multiple times throughout the administration to us about his powers of declaring an insurrection. He knew that if he declared an insurrection, he could deploy the military to the streets and do extraordinary things. So on January 6th, it was my supposition, as the Capitol was being stormed, that the president did want to invoke the Insurrection Act to put the military on the streets to prevent a transfer of power, because he had talked to us about it so many times. That's the type of thing that shows premeditation, in my opinion.
Two quick things. One, when did he talk about wanting to invoke the Insurrection Act early on, in terms of what context?
Well, usually it was around the border, Chris, is he would say, look, I want to seal the entire United States border. No immigrants get to come in. I've been told I've got magical powers under the Insurrection Act to do that.
He said magical powers?
Oh, he did indeed. Verbatim, those were his words, Chris. It sounds Trump-like because it was Trump's words. He said he had magical powers. He mentioned the Insurrection Act, and he said, I can use that to shut down the border. We went back to our lawyers and came to the White House and said, look, there is no insurrection at the southern border. You cannot invoke that power. But the president had the idea of insurrection in his mind. So again, that day, I'm sure he had the thought that he could use those powers if he wanted to deploy the military into the streets.
One other thing, because this is going to be a hot button, obviously. Milley having the concerns, fine. Milley wanting to do something about the concerns, fine. Milley calling his Chinese counterpart, meeting with top brass, telling the Chinese counterpart, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. I'll let you know if we're going to attack you. And telling the top military brass, you come to me no matter who tells you what. Do you believe that that is going too far?
Well, look, on the call with the Chinese, I think we need more information, because if Milley actually did say to a foreign adversary, I'll warn you before we hit you, and if we had a credible reason to hit an adversary, that's dangerous talk. I don't think we have all the details yet. It sounds to me like Milley was trying to reach out to foreign counterparts to say, let's keep the temperature low. You may hear some insane rhetoric out of Washington, but let's try to keep it from going to war, much like many statesmen have throughout history to try to keep temperatures low. I hope that's the case, and I think we need to ask those questions, and I think General Milley owes answers on that front.
It is Thursday, the 16th of September of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, how are you? We're here in a watch of sorts. You know, isn't it weird now that we live in the time where a mere sniffle might be a harbinger of something a bit more serious? So, my mom had a little spike in a fever yesterday, and it went down. Of course, she's been having some spikes in blood pressure and a few other things that we've been attending to at the doctor, but I feel hesitant about taking her to ER once again. We've been there a few times, and I got to tell you, that's a cesspool of viral activity in those ERs. I mean, geez, especially here in this part of Southern Oregon. Indeed. So, yeah, we're on a bit of a watch, and hopefully it's not what we think, or fear, shall I say. Because, like I said, now a mere sniffle is worrisome. Whereas before it's like, here, have some ginger and lemon mixed in with this warm water. You want a little bit of sugar or honey in it? We'll put some honey, local honey. Local honey, ginger, maybe a little bit of garlic and cayenne, too. We'll put that all in, and you'll sweat. Stay covered up when you do. So, yeah, I'm thinking that maybe home remedies might not be enough. We have been vaccinated. So she is getting a booster later on in a couple of months. Not now, of course. She did recently have a flu shot. So, there's maybe it could be that. Isn't it weird now? We just wish it was merely the flu. Remember when they said this virus was no different than the flu? No, it's like a cold, you idiot. God, these people. Speaking of stupid, Nicki Minaj keeps stepping in it. Oh, come on, girl. Just, maybe somebody in your social media team ought to tell you, give me the phone. Because I'm thinking, maybe she ought to, just lay off a little bit. Yeah. So she was invited to the White House, essentially to take a telephone call from the doctor. I believe maybe somebody from the Surgeon General's purview, not the Surgeon General themselves, of course. And Nikki apparently played it up. She was going to go as Elle Wood, wearing all pink, and she's going to get down to business. Well, wait a second. I don't know. I suppose if some guy has a communicable disease like syphilis or gonorrhea and his testicles have swollen, you probably tell your girlfriend it's from the vaccine. I don't know. I don't know how I got it, girl. I got it from the vaccine. Yeah, that's a pretty good excuse. And now the whole country of Trinidad had to track it down. Tucker Carlson wants to interview the guy. I don't know. Once you start saying my cousin's friend, it's tantamount to, talking to the mom of the taxi cab driver whose cousin's friend had an issue with the vaccine. It's too many degrees of separation, because once you start doing that, it's like a joke at the bar. Oh, my God. I got to tell you, I don't know if this is a secret. Rappers are rappers. They're not medical doctors. Okay? There might be some. The world is big. But by and large, I would say that if I'm going to listen to a rapper, I'm going to listen to them like maybe a journalist commenting on the times, a historian, oral history. It's all there, that. But I'm not going to look at any artist necessarily, unless they're Da Vinci. Maybe Da Vinci would know a little bit about all this. Probably. Nonetheless, is that a word? Yes, it is. But anyway, I'm not going to musicians. I'm not going to lead singers. I'm not going to MCs. I'm not going to the sound guy for medical advice. Not life and death medical advice. Not professional medical advice. And just because someone is top at their game doesn't mean they're at the top of every game. I know it takes a level of arrogance to soar to the heights of stardom. But that doesn't mean that you're an expert in everything. It doesn't mean you have the secret to the universe. You lucked out. Okay? Whatever that is. It's not karma. Once again, as a reminder, karma is not good or bad luck. Karma is just karma. We'll sit in a lotus flower and meditate on that. Who has ever been able to sit on a lotus flower and meditate on that? I don't know. I think our mass would make us sink because lotus flowers obviously float upon the surface of the water, and I think the surface tension would, not support us. Because that's science. Well, the reverberations of the trouncing, that Trumpism, I hate that. They're Nazis. But we'll call it Trumpism for now, just to delineate, what happened in 1930s Germany, because, I think maybe it's very similar to what's happening now. But anyway, a resounding defeat for Trumpism. The electorate have stood up and said, look, if you give us a chance to vote, we're going to vote against the Nazis. And California did. Over 66% said, get out of here. And in an odd election, they had some astounding number vote. Now, of course, it's all being excused by the corporate press, the national media, saying, they make it so easy to vote in California. Well, you know what? Wake the sleeping giant, and it's, the sleeping giant's going to wake up. It sort of reminded me about what happened after Prop 187, when people woke up to Proposition 187. That's how California turned blue. 187, that was the bigot anti-immigrant law, anti-Mexican law to be more specific. And Mexican was just anybody who happened to be, of Latin descent. So that could be a lot of people. Even Arabs got caught up in it. It was weird. During Prop 187, Arabs and, Middle Easterners were getting caught up in being Hispanic. And then after 9/11, my Hispanic friends started getting picked up for being Middle Easterners, Arabs. Even though I don't know, whatever. I wish they would have gone after the Arabs involved, but no, they didn't do that. And even though we have a report now as we bounce around a field here, the House of Saud intimately involved in 9/11, as if we didn't know. We knew it all along. Okay. No wonder Trump was doing that little sword dance with the weird globe. Yeah, talk about a new world order. And people say that that's okay. I looked at that and I said, that is so un-American. And his followers love it. They think it's some sort of connection to God. Yeah, I'll tell you. Connection to God through the devil. Jeez. If these people actually read their documents, they would know that the mark of the beast, there's going to be a mark on people's foreheads denoting who they are with the Antichrist. I'm kind of thinking those red hats might be the thing that was spoken about. It's not just, some sort of tattoo burned into the forehead. No, they put it right on their heads. And there's a mark right there. Make America great. Maggot. Yeah. The Antichrist, once again. The coming of the Lord is preceded by the Antichrist, who purports to be sent from God. And if not sent from God, is the embodiment of God himself, not themselves, herself, himself on earth. And if not the embodiment of God, actually God. And Trump went there. I have nothing to confess. I have nothing that I did ever wrong, ever. Trump said that. A crook. A mobbed-up mobster. Oh, yeah. Well, that takes a certain arrogance to say that, well, you are God. Not the Son of God. Not the embodiment of God on earth, but God. And his people apparently believe that. I must say, just anecdotally, my maggot actor brother responds quite, shall we say, violently if you happen to criticize the Orange Satan. Remember when the Orange Satan used to be just Daily Kos because of the orange banner and stuff? The great Orange Satan. And it was done tongue-in-cheek. Now the Orange Satan is you-know-who. Cheetos. Cheeto makeup. I don't get it. The guy has like some sort of weird bouffant hairstyle. He's like not in the best of shape. Okay? He wears weird Cheeto dust pancake makeup. They don't even hide it. They even have a line right down on his jawline. It's so insane. Oh, excuse me. And people look at that and say, "Oh God, he's God. Oh God, he's God." And they fall to pieces. Well, you know, I gotta say, Himmler and Hitler didn't look like the vision of Aryan masculinity that they tried to push on people. But people fell on their knees and were, all, oh, I'm gushing for Himmler. I'm gushing for Adolf. Gushing for Donnie Trump. My God. Oh, God. Well, I will say that it wasn't the hippies that brought us down, but maybe the conspicuous consumption, the heartlessness of just accumulating possessions, maybe that has something to do with the destruction of our society that got us a Donald Trump, okay? We didn't get Timothy Leary, okay? I'm just saying, we got Donnie Trump. We didn't get Richard Albert, Baba Ramdas, for those of you who are of that ilk. We didn't get them. Okay? We got Trump. We didn't get love, peace, and understanding. We got gimme, gimme, gimme. Wasn't the hippies that brought down America. I'm just saying. But it does pain me that there's a lot of hippies that turned into Nazis. I don't know how that happened. You never know. Maybe when, the drugs wore off, they found out what they really were. And what they really were, I don't know. It's not going to be by attrition, apparently. They have propagated. And there's a new generation coming up. And I think maybe they need a little correcting, as they say on the commune. Did they? Did they ever say that on the commune? Well, some of us might have said it. Tongue-in-cheek, maybe. All right, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we start off on this Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. At the top, yes, of course, Miles Taylor was anonymous during part of the time. Written about in Woodward and Costa's book. The new one just out. Yeah, at least part of the time. On the rest of the menu, Texas clergy could face tens of thousands of dollars in, quote, damages for discussing abortion with congregants under the state's new extreme abortion ban. That's kind of wordy, but you get the gist. GOP lawmakers are trying to strip affordable health care goals from the Biden agenda. And California state legislators announced they will make changes to the recall system that has been weaponized by the GOP. After the break, we move to the chef's table where world leaders will have to be vaccinated against the coronavirus to speak at the UN General Assembly's big meeting next week, but only Russia complained about it. And the UN rights chief is calling for a moratorium on the use of artificial intelligence technology, saying that it poses a serious risk to human rights. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And Kelly is getting ready for Netroots Nation. It's going to be virtual once again this year. And we have had a presence at Netroots Nation ever since Netroots Radio first came on board so many years ago. Over 10. Anyway, we used to go, but we're going to have a virtual one again this year, and it looks like we're getting lined up for some interviews and other, feats du jour as it comes up. So that will be coming up, and stay tuned for that, and we'll give you more information. But thank you, Kelly, for taking care of the chat room and everything else. If you would then take a gander, we're going to use that language. If you would take a gander across the page near the bottom of the homepage at netrootsradio.com, which has a fabulous live player right at the top, just mentioning it, okay? But at the bottom there, or near the bottom, if you look off to the left from the chat room link, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And nothing comes free or cheap. Nope. Everything costs, and because of that, we have to make these daily entreaties, at least on our show here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, for some funds to keep Netroots Radio afloat, because, we pull out of our own wallets, but we also need help from you, and you have been so generous to give it. Now, there have been those who have sent us the equivalent of what they would spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month. And then we are able to pool those dollars with what we have pulled out of our own wallets and continue to receive from you generous folk. And we stretch those dollars beyond compare. And then we pay our bills. We fly under the radar because that technology is still being used, thankfully. Wait until they got stuff a little bit more specific. Heat rays, lasers from Jewish people in outer space. Anyway, we fly under the radar and continue this resistance against the Nazi takeover of the United States of America, because that's exactly what it is. And we're not going to allow it. Americans punch Nazis. They don't appease them. Okay? I know the Nazis learned how to be Nazis by studying American white supremacists, but we got to punch those people too. Nazis. Anyway, thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty, which is much more than just punching Nazis. I mean, after all, this is America. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, I got to get through this. You can do so simply by going to @Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that, and Tom takes care of a hell of a whole lot more, too. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and get that posted up and linked up on Twitter, so you can go to the show notes and links. Yes, because where the real reportage is found through the show notes and links. Please do. And you can also follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Everywhere. Okay, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it comes out of The American Independent by Josh Axelrod. In tears, a college student called Reverend Lauren Jones Mayfield from her dorm room. The teenager was distraught. Her conservative parents had just disowned her over her choice in a partner, and after an unexpected pregnancy, she was in need of spiritual advice, Mayfield recalled. She was scared to death that God was going to abandon her like her parents had, Mayfield, a Louisville pastor, told the American Independent Foundation. And so she was reaching out to me as her faith leader for some reassurance, for a light of hope. In hearing her story and in sitting with her in that moment and holding her tears with her, she, I hope, received from me a light of acceptance and grace and compassion, and was able to make a decision that was best for her and for her educational pursuits. And she knew that God was with her as she went to seek abortion care, she added. Counseling members of her community is not unusual for Mayfield, but if she offered similar guidance now to someone in Texas considering terminating a pregnancy, under SB 8, the state's new restrictive new abortion law, she might find herself facing burdensome lawsuits and potentially owing tens of thousands of dollars in, quote, damages, as the law deputizes private citizens to sue anyone who knowingly engages in conduct that aids or abets the performance or inducement of an abortion. So much for religious freedom now, eh? Instead of the state punishing someone criminally, SB 8 outsources enforcement to private citizens, literally any private citizen who has standing to sue. Now, beyond clergy, experts say the law could implicate doctors, abortion clinic staff, nonprofits that raise money for procedures, and even Uber and Lyft drivers who take patients to their appointments. SB 8, which went into effect on the 1st of September, outlaws all abortion in Texas after 6 weeks gestation, before many even realize they're pregnant. While the Department of Justice announced a lawsuit against Texas to prevent the enforcement of the law, SB 8 is written in a way to make it more difficult to strike down, and experts say they're uncertain how legal challenges will play out in the courtroom. While SB 8 represents a new extreme in the push to criminalize abortion and those who help people access them, clergy have long played a role in the battle for reproductive rights. In 1967, a group of 19 ministers and 2 rabbis formed the Clergy Consultation Service on Abortion. Before Roe, there was a whole movement of clergy that organized across the country and provided access to illegal clinics or helped women who were in states where it was illegal to get places where they could. And Reverend Rebecca Todd Peters, a professor of religious studies at Ellen University and the author of Trust Women, a progressive Christian argument for reproductive justice, told the American Independent Foundation. The group grew to 1,000 clergy across North America over the following years until the Supreme Court legalized abortion in 1973 with Roe v. Wade. Now, one thing that we should remind ourselves is that this push by the clergy against abortion only began when right-wing racist elements in the GOP decided that they could not run on segregation forever, and they needed something to rile up the base. And then they came upon abortion. Israel of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Congressional Republicans are taking aim at provisions in President Joe Biden's $3.5 trillion Build Back Better investment proposal that would make health care more affordable. House committees are currently marking up their portions of the package. The GOP minority has used the hearings to push a series of amendments that would destroy key provisions aimed at expanding health insurance coverage, lowering drug prices, and providing paid medical leave. When the Democratic majority rejected those efforts, Republicans accused them of leaving constituents to die. The 2009 Affordable Care Act offered states funding to expand Medicaid eligibility, though this voluntary program is quite popular. Though this voluntary program is quite popular, I'll get it. Even in red states, 11 GOP-run states have refused to implement the expansion. Democrats are now seeking to address that as part of the investment package, creating a new federal program for those eligible people who live in states that have blocked Medicaid expansion, prompting GOP pushback. Why? Because they hate America. Okay? They want a civil war. They want a violent schism in our society, and they're more than happy to provide it. And they are. The House Republican Caucus policy arm warned that providing health insurance for millions would be fatal for many, claiming baselessly the damages of Medicaid expansion aren't just out of control spending needed to pay for it, but the lives that will be lost as people wait in line for health care under it. That old one again. Oh, yeah. We'll have long lines and people won't be able to see their doctors, and they won't be able to see the doctor of their choice. So instead, we're going to have an actuary decide maybe in, 9-10 months, if you can have that emergency surgery at a doctor of their choice. Don Thompson of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hours after California Governor Gavin Newsom beat back a recall election that could have cost him his job, his fellow Democrats in the state legislature said that they will push for changes to make it more difficult to challenge a sitting governor. That could include increasing the number of signatures needed to force a recall election, raising the standard to require wrongdoing on the part of the officeholder, and changing the process that could permit someone with a small percentage of votes to replace the state's top elected official. I think the recall process has been weaponized, Newsom said a day after his decisive victory. He said the recall rules affect not just governors, but school boards, city councils, county supervisors, and district attorneys, and notably in Los Angeles and San Francisco, where progressive prosecutors with reform agendas are facing recall efforts there. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to NetRootsRadio.com. Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. It happens to us all. You might be reading a book or washing the dishes, or maybe even listening to a podcast, when suddenly you realize your mind was miles away. Well, if you've ever wondered why the mind wanders, you might want to pay attention to this. A new study shows that localized brain waves, resembling those present when we fall asleep, are associated with brief interruptions in our stream of consciousness. The findings appear in the journal Nature Communications. Thomas Andrian of the Paris Brain Institute grew interested in the neural mechanisms that underlie daydreaming while on an extended road trip with his wife.
We traveled for a year over 3 continents by car, accumulating long hours on difficult roads.
As time rolled slowly by, Andrian found his attention would stray from the road ahead.
Indeed, somewhere deep in Patagonia, I flipped our car on the roof, just because I was thinking about something else and reacted badly when getting back to the real world.
Well, no one was harmed, but the incident did make Andrian wonder,
what's going on in our brain when our mind wanders?
It actually happens more than you might think.
According to some accounts, we spend up to half our waking life mind wandering.
And it happens most frequently when we're tired or fatigued. At that point,
we can enter states in which part of the brain will show an activity resembling sleep, despite the rest of our brain being clearly awake.
It's like part of the brain takes a power nap. But does the same thing happen when an individual is not worn out, but well rested? Andrian decided to find out.
To do so, we asked 26 healthy participants to perform a rather boring task.
Like pressing a button each time they saw an image of a number, unless it was the number 3.
As you can imagine, it is easy to switch on the autopilot and perform the task mindlessly, freeing ample room for mind wandering.
Periodically, the researchers would interrupt to ask participants whether they were fully focused, or if they were thinking of something else, or even nothing at all. Based on this feedback, it seems participants were single-minded and fully on task
only half of the time.
To find out what was going on the rest of the time, the researchers monitored participants' brainwaves by EEG to observe their neural rhythms. During sleep, the brain is blanketed by slow waves of synchronized neural activity, and the team saw something similar when participants indicated that they were mentally checked out.
These slow waves are thought to be associated with pauses in the activity of the individual neurons, which could perturb neural processes and lead to lapses of attention.
The only difference was that the slow waves Andrian saw during the experiment were more localized to particular parts of the brain.
Importantly, the location of this slow wave within the brain could distinguish between different modes of inattention.
When the slow waves were concentrated in the front of the brain, volunteers found that their mind was wandering, and they then reacted to the images impulsively. When in the back of the brain, they said their mind was a blank, and they failed to respond at all. Andrian says that makes sense, given what we know about what different parts of the brain do for us.
Frontal regions are indeed heavily involved in cognitive control and the regulation of impulsivity, whereas posterior regions encode and integrate sensory information, enabling us to react to our environment.
The researchers are currently exploring whether these slow waves can be harnessed to promote creative thinking, which might someday lead to big rewards for sleeping on the job. For Scientific Americans, 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, Take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, follow @CDC Emergency on Twitter or visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Can we agree that the North won the Civil War?
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
And while we're on common ground, can we also agree that the Union was saved, that Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, that slavery was a horrifying institution, and that we shouldn't venerate historical figures who lived to perpetuate a system that treated human beings as less than human and as disposable property? Throughout the South, beginning about 130 years ago, statues were erected in public places to celebrate the Confederacy as if it were a noble cause, as if it had won the Civil War. In recent years, some of those statues have been removed from public squares. One of the largest was a 21-foot-high likeness of Confederate General Robert E. Lee that stood atop a granite pedestal twice that height in a major traffic circle in Richmond, Virginia, which was the capital of the Confederacy. It was removed only in September 2021. Confederate war hero statues are a celebration of white supremacy. Sadly, most of them still remain. Throughout the South, there are over 700 of these monuments. That's just wrong. Our public squares belong to everyone. They should be places where we celebrate democracy and freedom and equality, and not Civil War generals who fought to perpetuate slavery.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Seconee Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. What the hell? We are expecting a high of about 84, but it seems like because of the angle of the sun, the nights are going to be considerably cooler than what they have been, which is okay. And it looks like we'll have sunny conditions throughout the day with winds light and variable and clear to partly cloudy overnight. They're saying now lows in the low 50s, which is actually tolerable when you're sleeping with the windows open, shall we say, and mostly sunny skies tomorrow with highs around 86. Winds will be picking up out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing with it, I should say, copious amounts of precipitation expected to fall from the sky on Saturday and Sunday, bringing with it well over an inch of rain, and we hope so because that would definitely put out the wildfires, and we need that to happen. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to spike. Yes, now we are at 204,087 confirmed cases, and our deceased have gone up by 3 overnight and now stand at 243. Ragweed pollen is rated moderate right outside the window here in Rogue River, and the air quality index for the region is good at 42 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at a fall-time level of 6. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.03 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 80%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 73 and fair. Paris is 72 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 86 and fair. Kyiv is 69 and fair. Kabul is 71 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 78 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 70 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Jennifer Peltz of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays, if you didn't know already. World leaders will have to be vaccinated against the coronavirus to speak at the UN General Assembly's big meeting next week, the Assembly leader and New York City officials have said, prompting swift objections from at least one nation. With the diplomatic world's premier event being held in person for the first time during the pandemic, City International Affairs Commissioner Penny Abhiwardena told the Assembly in a letter last week that officials consider the hall a convention center and therefore subject to the city's vaccination requirement. We are proud to join the ongoing efforts to keep all UNGA attendees and our fellow New Yorkers safe during the pandemic, she and Mayor Bill de Blasio said in a statement, adding that the city would offer free walk-in vaccinations, Johnson & Johnson's single shot, and testing outside the UN during the meeting. But Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenizia blasted the vaccine demand as clearly discriminatory and an infringement on the nation's rights at the UN. We believe that no measures beyond reasonable precautions should be introduced that de facto prevent member states to participate in a meeting in the GA Hall, he wrote. And that was in a letter that was seen by the AP. Requesting an urgent assembly meeting Thursday today to discuss the matter, Nebenizia said the group needed to think about people who can't be vaccinated for medical reasons and those who have developed antibodies from very recent cases of COVID-19. Well. I was wondering where we were getting all that medical disinformation.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jamie Keaton and Matt O'Brien of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The UN Human Rights Chief is calling for a moratorium on the use of artificial intelligence technology that poses a serious risk to human rights, including face-scanning systems that track people in public spaces. Michelle Bachelet, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, also said that countries should expressly ban AI applications which do not comply with international human rights law. Applications that should be prohibited include government social scoring systems that judge people based on their behavior, and certain AI-based tools that categorize people into clusters such as by ethnicity or gender. AI-based technologies can be a force for good, but they can also have negative, even catastrophic effects if they are used without sufficient regard to how they affect people's human rights, she said in a statement. Her comments came along with a new UN report that examines how countries and businesses have rushed into applying AI systems that affect people's lives and livelihoods without setting up proper safeguards to prevent discrimination and other harms. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.